David Biello from Scientific American here at the Heartland Institute's Climate Change Conference, Day 2, with Marc Morano. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers?
Marc Morano, the U.S. Senate Environment Public Works Committee Communication Director, Minority. And do I look at the camera or you?
Look at me. Okay. And first question, global warming, is it real or man-made?
There's a wide range of spectrums on that. Obviously, there's a human component, whether you're talking about a CO2 forcing, a lot of scientists say. Some say there isn't. I don't know what the numbers are on that. But as far as land use changes, all the other impacts of deforestation, obviously mankind has impacted our climate. There's no way around that. But the question is, we are currently well within natural climate variability. Multiple studies have shown that too. Just 2007 medieval warm period was about 0.3 C warmer. The study analysis in Science magazine showed that 20th century not anonymously warned. Andrew Rebka of the New York Times has written that recent weather is not outside of natural variability. So the point is, Greenland has had its high point in 1940 before 80% of CO2. The Arctic, if you go back 1,500 years, has actually cooled. So you look at all that and you say, what is driving this whole really scientific debate anyway? And it's these computer models, frankly, about scary computer models. And that is where you look at some of the statements by even the United Nations scientists who say the models don't account for half the climate. So the whole thing is predicated on unproven computer models. And there's actually a scientist here from the Ivy League, University of Pennsylvania, a forecast expert, I should say, who says the methodology is wrong, particularly when it comes to the polar bear. So the whole argument comes down to these computer models, which even the UN doesn't have confidence in. And that's where I think extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And, that's the gist of it at this point in time. And recent peer-reviewed studies, 2007, are debunking concerns, or at least alarm, over rising CO2. The Stephen Schwartz Brookhaven Lab peer-reviewed study came out in summer of 2007, showed we may have already seen most of the warming, and there might be additional warming from CO2, but that it's nowhere near the sensitivity the IPCC puts to it.
And as far as terminology goes, climate change or global warming?
Very interesting. Now, obviously, the phrase global warming, skeptics will like because it pins you down. The other side being, there's a scientific side, there's an activist side, the other side. I'm talking about the promoters of climate fear, the Al Gores and the media. They like climate change because then a drought is climate change, a hurricane is climate change, a flood is climate change, tornadoes are climate change. Anything they want can be climate change. Global warming is not as good. James Lovelock wants global heating. Other people want climate disruption, all this kind of stuff. I think global warming is, I know a lot of the promoters of climate fear don't like that, but that is what really we're talking about. Increased CO2, increasing the temperature, so I don't see how they can run from that.
So it's kind of the reverse of the Frank Luntz memo of a few years back.
That memo and the implications people think it has it's gotten silly with that. So I don't even know. I've never actually read the memo, I'm proud to say, ever.
All right.
I've never read it.
So then, of course, you mentioned Al Gore. He's, I guess, the poster child, if you will, for the pro-global warming camp. Do you think that there's a leader, whether scientifically or politically, on this side?
Sure. Well, I certainly think James Hansen would probably be the leader scientifically. Pop culture, obviously Al Gore would be. And you could argue Raymond Pichari would be in the sort of international government range.
And what about on your side?
On our side, certainly the United States Senate. James Inhofe is the leading one. He led the charge against McCain-Lieberman in 2005, and he's ready to do it against Lieberman-Warner. In terms of a scientific leader, probably at this point, and you probably got the sense, is Fred Singer. He did his alternative UN report here, which I don't want to say the acronym because I can't remember what it was now. But he did his report. He's probably the grand dean of the climate atmospheric scientists. In terms of this, now in terms of otherwise, you could probably argue Richard Lindzen is the leader of the skeptical movement in terms of someone who's been at it for decades and very prominent.
But he's not here.
No, he's not, but that I don't know. I know he also spends time in France. A lot of people aren't here in terms of that. In fact, our Senate report we did had over 400 names, and scientists from two dozen countries. I'm actually impressed by the number of scientists they did get in here from all over the place: Australia, New Zealand, Sweden. I don't know if there's any from South America, but.
So politically speaking, obviously the three main candidates have all come out in favor of at least a carbon cap and trade system. What do you foresee, I guess, both for the remaining time of this Congress and after the elections next year?
Good question. We don't know. We're preparing for a possible May floor fight for Lieberman-Warner. However, Friends of the Earth and a lot of environmental groups, a lot of other strategists on the other side of the political spectrum, working with the Democrats and for this Lieberman-Warner, are now speculating they may wait, that they may forego it and do it next year when they estimate it'll be a friendlier climate. But either way, we're facing a potential recession. We're facing $4 gallon gas. We're facing heating and home, all these bills, energy bills going up. It gets harder and harder to sell a climate bill that they admit will have no detectable impact on the climate, but have a detectable impact on your wallet and have real economic pain. So I think right now everything looks good, and people are going to support. This is a politically popular thing. It's in the media. We had to do something. When push comes to shove, will the American people support their senator in each state voting for a bill that's going to further raise gas, air conditioning, heating at a time when we're already facing recession? It could wipe out any stimulus package, any bill that we do pass, and for what? Pure symbolism. And that's going to be a question that senators are going to have to ask themselves.
So are you more concerned about, I guess, faulty science of climate change or the potential economic impacts of solutions?
Let's just say right now Al Gore's right. We're facing a climate crisis. And what I like to say is if we actually were facing a climate crisis and Al Gore and the UN were our only hope, we would all be doomed. And that's the bottom line. If you look at what they proposed in 2.5 decades, what would they have proposed? Credible plan that would have a detectable impact, not Kyoto, which they call a first step, which no one can even make that first step in Europe, or most can't make the first step in Europe. So the question is, even if they're right, there's no reason to support Lieberman-Warner, even if they're absolutely right, because it's not going to have an impact. It's going to add to our economy. It's going to add impacts to our economy, and it's going to create a whole new federal bureaucracy. The carbon, if I have it right, the Carbon Credit Allocation Board or the Carbon Board, presidentially appointed, whole new bureaucracy. When we really should be doing what Senator Inhofe supported years ago and still supports, the Asia-Pacific Partnership. It brings in the developing world of China, India, technology sharing. That's the future. Economic growth, new technology. It's not command and control, new bureaucracies, raising energy price, punishing the American people for absolutely no gain other than pure symbolism.
And what about the green jobs argument, as I'd put it, that these new technologies are going to provide more jobs than the old technologies?
That is, whenever the government comes in and essentially interferes with the market, there's always going to be shifts. So some people are going to lose a job, some people are going to gain a job. That argument falls on its face when you realize the government is still going to be manipulating and managing much larger sections of the economy. So as an economic growth perspective, you're not going to have a zero-sum game. You're going to have a government more activist, more regulatory, and therefore more burden on the economy. You can't get around that, no matter how many you try to play with numbers about, this green jobs. It's become a buzzword in Washington, and frankly, it's not really, doesn't have much weight.
So finally, I guess, what is your aim, your goal in the next few months, few years, however long you guys have left?
Well, sound like it's preparing our obituary.
Well, no. I didn't mean like that. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Right now we're going to get the message out to the American people that any climate bills that are on the table are going to essentially result in a huge tax for no benefit. And the science is actually turning the other way. More scientists are speaking out. We just had the first woman PhD meteorologist come out, Joanne Simpson. She's in her 80s. She just retired. She's worked for NASA, and now she said, I feel free to speak out. Top Portuguese scientist just retired, just spoke out, dissenting from Al Gore in the UN version. When people, that's going to be in the background. They're going to know the science is shifting, more coming out, peer-reviewed studies, as I mentioned. A new study, by the way, just today, showed that lack of dust is up to 1/3 Fahrenheit, 1/3 of a degree since the 1960s, resulting from lack of volcanic dust in the atmosphere. So, and then you have the Pat Michaels and other peer-reviewed study, which shows the temperatures were higher. My point is, when people realize the science and the number of this consensus isn't true, when people realize what they're going to have to pay, and when people realize that the bills are pure symbolism, I think they have a serious PR problem on the other side to sell this at a time of a recession when we're trying to pass stimulus packages and all that.
So to play the devil's advocate and put it in pop culture's terms, is doubt your product?
Actually, no. Certainty is our product. We can certainly say what the costs are going to be, at least within a reasonable time frame. We can certainly say there'll be no impact on the climate. We can certainly say it's going to be an expansion of federal bureaucracy and control of more command and control of the economy. So absolute certainty there. The only place where the uncertainty would come, well, actually not really uncertainty. It's actually the certainty is the science is becoming more uncertain, if you can say that. So that's where it comes. But no, the arguments within these cap and trade bills, these so-called insurance policies, are absolutely certain. We're not sowing uncertainty there. We're absolutely certain of what we're saying. And the whole idea of an insurance policy, I ask you, would you buy a home insurance policy that had a huge upfront premium, but if your house ever burned down, you'd have virtually no payout? That would be investigated by insurance commission. And that's essentially what all these climate bills are, including Lieberman Warner.
Well, thank you for answering that question that I was going to ask but didn't have to.
Okay.
Thanks for your time,
Thanks
Marc.
a lot. All right. Do me right. Now, come on. I don't want to do a blog.